Pancakes are one of my kids' favorite foods. The problem is I have 4 kids, so it takes a while to make all the pancakes that I need in order to actually feed them. Plus, by the time they're done, they're not all the same temperature. Some are hot, some are cold. We end up eating in stages. So when I was mentioning this to a friend of mine, she mentioned sheet pan pancakes. Well, that's great, but I couldn't find a gluten-free option. So I decided to make one. I've used a bunch of different types of pre-made mixtures from a gluten-free standpoint for a pancake batter. This one's by far my favorite. I like Kodak as well, but this one is definitely my favorite. So I'm gonna show you my favorite pancake batter that I use with this, that I dress up with seasonings and whatnot, and then show you how to make the gluten-free sheet pan pancakes version using this. But first, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Melissa. This channel is dedicated to gluten-free, celiac-safe cooking and baking tips and recipes. Follow along for more and drop a comment if there's anything you think I should try. Let's get started. As I said in the intro, my base for this is the gluten-free Bisquick pancake and baking mix, but I don't actually follow the directions on the back of the box to make it. But first, in a large mixing bowl, I'm going to go ahead and dump this mix in, and I'm going to use the whole box. Next, I'm going to add around 3/4 of a cup of vegetable oil. Honestly, most of the time I just eyeball it, so it doesn't really need to be exact or anything. Then we're going to add 3 large eggs. Speaking of which, I really wish that I lived somewhere where we could have chickens, because that would be so much better. I love fresh eggs. Unfortunately, that's not an option right now. These work okay, don't get me wrong. They're just expensive. But anyways, this next tip comes from a friend, and honestly, it really does make all of the difference. We're going to add some cultured buttermilk blend. It is gluten-free. We're going to add about 4 heaping tablespoons in, and it does wonderful things for the flavor of the pancakes. Next, I'm going to add cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and vanilla. And honestly, I don't have a really strong flavor of any of them in the batter when the pancake is done, but I definitely taste the absence of them if I don't put them in. It tastes empty if I don't have them in. But I add a lot of cinnamon, add a little bit of nutmeg, add a little bit of ginger, add a little bit of vanilla. Just kind of measure with your heart and play with it. So if you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know what spices you use most often when you make pancakes, because this is definitely an area where I love to experiment. Now we're going to start mixing with a fork, and we're going to have our milk handy, and slowly we're going to add a little bit of milk at a time until we get a good consistency. But these are all the ingredients that we add together to make our pancake base. I will say the hardest part to incorporate as I mix everything together is definitely the buttermilk blend that we added, but it is so worth it from a taste standpoint, so you just kind of try and mash it with your fork against the side of the bowl when you come to it. You may have to play around with your consistency to figure out what ends up working best for you. If I'm going for 2 sheet pans worth of pancakes, then sometimes I'll go for a thinner batter, but then I definitely need to make sure I'm paying attention for my baking time so I don't end up overcooking it. Today I'm going for 1 extra large sheet pan, and so I want something that's thick enough that it's going to get a little bit of a rise as it bakes. So I want it to be thick enough that it kind of stays on the fork a little bit, and thin enough that it kind of falls in a ribbon, not a glop, if that makes sense. You could probably use a hand mixer or even a whisk and make this go a little bit faster, but I decided to go simple. And it doesn't actually take that long to mix this up, but it can sometimes feel like a long time when you're watching it. So I think I'm going to speed this part up so you guys don't get bored. And we're back. This here is the goal, this consistency. Once you've come to this point, you're going to get a sheet pan that has a lip, an edge, and you're going to line it with parchment paper, and then you're going to pour your batter in. And now you're going to listen to my son be some sort of monster in the background. Also, this part goes a lot better with a rubber spatula. I just didn't have one handy. Next, we're going to smooth the batter out to all of the corners of our sheet pan. Here you want to be careful. You want to have everything be around the same depth. If you've got some spots that are really, really shallow and some that are a little more full, then you're going to have inconsistencies in your pancake bake. So just make sure you're not like scraping the middle as you push the batter over to the sides, or leaving like a very, very thin edge at the very edge that's, thick in the middle. If you've gone with thinner batter, this part is definitely easier. You just want to make sure that you're not going too thin where it'll burn as you bake. This is also a good time to go ahead and preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That way it can be preheating as you are adding your toppings. And speaking of toppings, what are your favorite add-ins for pancakes? Pancakes are the kind of area where I like to experiment and I like to have fun, and I use whatever I have sometimes, and sometimes I buy something especially for it. I feel like our three favorite as a family tend to be blueberries or bananas or chocolate chips, but I have used so many different toppings. The nice thing about these is I can try so many different variations all at once without affecting the actual pancake batter. Once I did bananas and walnuts and made kind of like a banana nut bread version. Once I did blueberries and I added a little bit of lemon zest, and then I took a little bit of lemon juice and mixed it with a little bit of powdered sugar and put it in a little Ziploc bag and cut the corner and piped a light drizzle on top after the pancake had baked and made like a blueberry lemon tart. Banana and chocolate chip work really well together. There was one time that I drizzled Nutella on top and that was delightful. I've even drizzled different jams on top. My kids love it. So yeah, if you make this, please tell me what toppings you end up trying because I feel like the possibilities are endless. Today I'm going to put chocolate chips on half of the pan and then blueberries on the other half of the pan. And then I'm going to drizzle different things on the sides, the edges of the pan, and that way I walk away with 4 different kinds of pancakes for this one sheet pan. And just as a warning, I'm definitely going a little heavier on the sugar today than I do normally just because my kids need a little bit of a pick-me-up. But you can definitely tailor your toppings for healthier options if that is what you are aiming for. For the blueberries, I'm just using frozen blueberries. They keep the best in my freezer. I don't have to worry about them going bad. And the nice thing about this is they don't dye your whole batter blue because they're just kind of on top. You're not blending them in as they melt. And I wish I had a lemon right now. I would love to zest one on top and have that little bit of tartness to cut the sweet. Oh, so good. But since I don't, I'm going to take some chocolate syrup and drizzle it just on the edge of the side with the chocolate chips, just to add a little bit of extra oomph. And then on the other side, I'm going to take some strawberry jam, the gluten-free strawberry jelly jam that I have, and put that in a Ziploc bag that has a nice good corner to it. And then I'm going to snip the corner off and drizzle that on the side. Now it really just needs like 1 spoonful. I'm not using a whole lot because I'm not covering a whole lot of area. If you wanted to cover a whole lot of area, you can. But I'm just going to kind of snip off the end here so that I'm not doing big goops of it. A goop, that's a fun word. And just drizzle a light, a bit of strawberry jam on the other edge over here, so I have more of like a mixed berry type pancake. And honestly, my kids love the strawberry jam. It does weird things when it bakes where it kind of like sinks into the batter a little more and like makes cuts where there wasn't any, but the taste of it is fantastic. The last thing I'm going to add is a light sprinkling of brown sugar on top. Great taste, but it also helps the pancake brown a little bit better in the oven. You don't have to add it, it's purely optional, but you might end up needing to bake just a little bit longer to get the same level of browning than you would with the brown sugar on top. At least that's been my personal experience. It doesn't add a lot of time to not add it, just a couple of minutes, but does take a little bit longer to bake it if I don't have the brown sugar on top. But you're going to bake for 15 to 20 minutes at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Closer to the 15 if you've added the brown sugar, closer to the 20 if you haven't. And then you can go ahead and cut it right away. It's not difficult to cut. It's nice and light. And because of the parchment paper, you don't have to worry about it sticking to the pan. Now, I tend to cut it to where each different type of pancake has its own section, and I tend to cut them pretty small. And that way I can split them up where every kid gets one of each, and then they can get more of whatever kinds they end up wanting. And if I'm just feeding my kids and myself, then usually this is enough for 2 meals. And that's with my 4 children eating a whole lot of it. Now, that may not be the case when they're all teenagers, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Sometimes I'll have fruit for them with this, or eggs, or bacon. Sometimes it's just a pancakes lunch. But I like that it really doesn't take very long to make, especially if I don't get too fancy with the toppings. And since most of the time it's in the oven, I can pop it in and then do dishes or laundry and get all the busy things done in my life while I wait for it to bake. And then it's done and I can feed my kids. Honestly, any meal that doesn't require me standing over the stove for the duration of its cook time is a win in my book. And these really are delicious. They're soft, they're light, they're amazing. And my kids don't feel deprived because they can't go to places like IHOP or Denny's because they like my pancakes better anyway. So that's it. They're done. And so now I can dish up. I usually start with one of each kind for each kid and then go from there. And they can have, different kinds and experiment. Some days I do more healthy versions, like bananas and more blueberries and that kind of stuff, and more just strict fruit. And some days I'm going with more of a desserty type thing because we've had a rough day and we need something a little bit more of a pick-me-up. So today is a pick-me-up day. So I'm gonna finish plating this and getting them started for dinner, so I'm gonna go. But drop a comment on what toppings you guys might want to try, and I hope that you enjoy this. And again, the Bisquick one seems to work the best for this. I don't follow the recipe exact, I just kind of play with it and go with what consistency works for me. I mean, Kodak works pretty good as well. Some of the others taste really gluten-free. These two I can tend to get tasting non-gluten-free, like just a good solid pancake. And I prefer food that just tastes good regardless of whether or not it's gluten-free. Yeah, I don't like my food tasting like cardboard. So yeah, so anyways, I'm gonna finish this. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye.